Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for coming back from lunch on time. What an amazing presentation during lunch. My name is Ryan Spicer, and I work for Keurig Dr. Pepper, and I was so excited to hear about this panel and to have the opportunity to moderate. It's like the perfect panel for me. So we have a speaker from Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport, which is a place where I worked and where I really started my career, so I'm super excited about that. We have a speaker from the North Central Texas Council of Governments. So when I worked at DFW Airport, I spent many a day sitting in the big conference room at the Council of Governments. And then later on, I worked for PepsiCo, where I worked in transportation, and I had a even deeper appreciation for the work that the COG does and how much it makes this area better. And our other panelist is from Coca-Cola. Now, I used to work for PepsiCo. I work for Dr. Pepper today. I have never worked for Coca-Cola, so we're going to keep it like super high level, no secrets here. But we do work together when it comes to sustainability. So I feel like I know the beverage industry a little bit. I'm very happy to have someone here. There's a couple of themes I want to explore, and I think we've explored those today. But you know, having a large-scale sporting event in Dallas-Fort Worth is not new. Like, we do that all the time. You come here in the fall, and it's every other Sunday. So what makes this a little bit different? Let's talk about that. Dallas-Fort Worth is a very international place, but this is going to be a different sort of event with a lot of international guests. And does that bring new and different challenges, and how do we address those things? And then, of course, we all have long-term ambitions, and especially this group working in sustainability, we have ambitions to leave it better than we found it. So how do we use this moment with the World Cup coming to Dallas as an opportunity to drive lasting change? So that's enough from me. I'm going to introduce our panelists and ask them to come up and take a seat. So our first panelist is Natalie Betger. She's a senior program manager at the North Central Texas Council of Governments. She received her master's degree in urban planning from the University of Akron and a bachelor's degree in geography from Northwest Missouri. She currently oversees congestion management and systems operations program area. So she's responsible for, check this out, coordinating with partner agencies to implement congestion management strategies, regional traffic signal program, regional data exchange, incident management, special events, and she's worked on transportation plans for the Super Bowl, the NCAA Final Four, and college football playoffs in the North Texas region. So she's especially equipped to handle this situation. So please welcome Natalie. Our next panelist is Abraham Tweme from Arca Continental Coca-Cola Southwest Beverages, which is one of the largest Coca-Cola bottlers in the United States and a subsidiary of Arca Continental. His role entails the definition and execution of the company's sustainability strategy. And prior to this role, he served as a corporate chief of environment for Arca Continental, where he was responsible for the environmental performance of their subsidiaries in Mexico, Argentina, Ecuador, Peru, and the United States. So please welcome Abraham. And last but not least is Sarah Zymek. Sarah Zymek is a senior manager of enterprise sustainability programs at the Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport, where she leads the development and implementation of the airport sustainability strategy, focusing on areas such as decarbonization, energy performance, circular economy, water, and biodiversity. She does it all. She also oversees the airport's solid waste and recycling program, composting, and environmental grants program. So please welcome Sarah. And does this work? Yep, it does. Okay, excellent. So one, thank you all for being here. It's a pleasure to speak with you. We've got a little bit of time here to chat about this major thing that's happening in North Texas, the World Cup, and what that means for all of us. So I thought I would open with a question for the whole group. And so we'll take volunteers on who wants to answer first. But we're all in the process of setting sustainability goals, right? And I work for a company where we set long-term sustainability goals, but we have this World Cup event that is happening. We know when it's going to happen. We can't plan around it, but we know it's going to have to impact our goals and our goal planning process. So how do we go from saying having long-term theoretical goals to hardwired near-term operational readiness? Like, how do we make that pivot, and how do we make that transition? How does sustainability change when it's happening right now at this scale?
Sure, I'll go first. So in terms of sustainability, we focus on our air quality as a big sustainability element that we put in our transportation plans. And so we put out a long-range transportation plan that looks into 2050. We use our travel model to look at how much traffic we're expected on the roadway systems in the North Texas area, and from that we estimate emissions. And so as part of that, we also estimate how many folks might use other modes within our region. And so transit is one of those modes. The ability to adjust your commute outside of those peak periods, because the last thing we want to do is promote more traffic just sitting there idling. And so our long-term vision is looking at how we implement those other modes, reduce idling on our roadway system. And so to bring that forward to planning for the World Cup, we focus on a large transit component for the World Cup, which gets folks out of their vehicles riding our transit system. And then also, how do we reduce the background traffic within the region? So applying those long-term goals of looking at other modes, adjusting our commute time so we're not sitting there idling, those are the same practices that we apply when we look at how do we operate the system on match days. How do we deal with the influx of people coming into our region, and how do we try to reduce their impact on the air quality?
And maybe I'll go to Sarah real quick. So at the international airport, you guys are used to having millions of people. Well, how is this going to change? How are you going to handle this additional load of people and manage, to hit the energy efficiency and the waste reduction targets and all those other things that you're trying to achieve in a regular scenario at such a complex place as DFW?
Sure, that's a great question. At DFW, we are well aware that growth is part of our future at the airport and across the whole Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. In a month like the World Cup and the passengers and the customers it will bring, it really highlights the importance of our long-term sustainability strategy, and it gives us the opportunity to test how well we're doing. DFW is right now, we're the third largest airport in the world in terms of both operations and passengers, and we're expected to surpass 100 million passengers per year sometime in the next 5 years. And as part of that, we have a $12 billion capital program right now. We're adding 40 net new gates. We're building a sixth terminal, Terminal F. We're adding on to some of our existing terminals. And so growth is part of our future, and FIFA really just brings that to the forefront of everyone's minds. And for many years, I think Ryan's well aware of this, a core theme in our department is to decouple that growth from negative environmental impacts. And so that it forces us to see where we could do more with fewer resources. I think a good example of a success we've had is that since 2010, we've reduced our emissions by almost 80%, while we've simultaneously reduced energy costs and while annual passengers have grown by over 30 million. So we've had success there, and now we're looking to replicate what we've done with energy and emissions in a bunch of other facets, waste being one of those key areas. But our capital program now, which focuses on meeting the needs of our community and the growth over the next several decades, is really a good opportunity for us to put those sustainability plans into motion. We recently made some updates to our green building standards and our design criteria manual to make sure that the facilities we're building now are built to be more efficient in terms of waste, in terms of energy, in terms of emissions, so that these systems are our legacy into the future. It's not just designed for one event and that's it. Yes, we're going to handle the FIFA traffic, but we also want to ensure that 50 years into the future that our facilities have a lasting impact.
Awesome, thank you. So I feel like, Abraham, your focus within the Coca-Cola network is really going to be like on the experience, like at the events, like at the stadium and at the fan zone. So Sarah and Natalie are doing everything they can in their power to make sure they get as many people as possible to the event as efficiently as possible. What are you going to do when these hundreds of thousands or not millions of people show up, and how do you make their experience a sustainable one?
Yeah, that's, I think it's a fascinating process that we're doing, because when you look at an event like the World Cup, from a size standpoint, yes, it's not that different to what you might see, like an individual game. It's not that different to what you might see when you have like a Cowboys game. Roughly the same amount of people. So the process for a single event might look relatively similar. The challenge that an event like the World Cup brings is you don't have the 2 weeks in between the games. You're not looking at 10 to 14 days so that you can plan the next time. You're looking sometimes at 2 or 3 days. So from an operations standpoint, which I don't really touch, but I have to give them a shout out because of what they're doing. our teams are managing the expectation of demand for 2 or 3 games within a small time frame, considering that the stadium has a finite quantity of space where they can hold on to anything that they're going to be selling during those days. So you need to plan ahead, and you need to address how to not lose a customer's opportunity to experience our products. But on the flip side of that, if we just go and we just throw a bunch of stuff out there, you have a ton of waste that gets generated. So the process requires a lot of that planning and back and forth and understanding, like, how much are we actually going to be using of X, Y, and Z, so that A, we can plan for ensuring that we don't deliver additionally, but B, so that we can consider all those elements when we're planning the back of house solution. Which brings me to the second element that connects a little bit to your first question. It's like, how are we looking at our long-term goals and tying it to this short event? Our long-term goal is around achieving 100% collection of the packaging that we're putting out into the market. And we've made some really good strides. A couple of years, we've even been really close to hitting the goal. But it's a market that it fluctuates. Recycling just fluctuates depending on market conditions, and unfortunately, in the case of plastic, also on oil market conditions. So it is something where that decouplement hasn't happened yet, and because of that, there is often a financial incentive to move towards non-recycled materials. When we come in and we incorporate into our messaging, which is another thing that we're going to be doing, that we have recycled content in our packaging, and then we have bottles made with 100% recycled content, we're putting that out in the open, front and center, and it's a message that we cannot really back away from anymore. So what we're doing is we're establishing their message, not just for the consumer, which the consumer will see it and they might say, hey, that's good, but really it's for the recycling industry as a whole. Saying, hey, you'll have a customer here that will come and buy the material, regardless of how much of a premium we're paying, because we see that our customers are valuing it. And because they value it, and because they see that this is important for the environment and for the future, we are willing to make that investment on their behalf, and we're willing to put the product with those additional costs in their warehouses and in their coolers.
And considering the size of investment you're making in infrastructure, how do you ensure that you're collecting as much material as possible, but also doing it in a way that is universally acceptable to the international audience that you're going to have? Like, how do you design a recycling system for people from all over the world? We've been trying to solve this for decades. So
yes,
tell us how you're going to do it.
And unfortunately, I didn't find like the hen with the golden eggs. But we did find a couple of things that might be interesting. Now, one was that people will always dedicate some additional time if a container is unconventional. And I don't want to spoil what we're going to do. All I'm going to say is we're definitely bringing unconventional containers to the World Cup. But the biggest learning that we saw is you need to be clear, short messages, few words, and pictures. You have to have an icon of what you're asking people to put there. So it's easy enough when we have a flow of materials that is relatively controlled. So the World Cup, with all the challenges that may come with an event of this size, the one great thing is FIFA comes, well, one of many great things, is FIFA comes in and has so much power over the processes that are in place that they can generally say, this is what is actually going to happen during those days. And from a planning standpoint, it's so much easier when you know what are the materials that are going to be coming in. It's so much easier to plan because you know what are your potential contamination sources, what are the things that people might misinterpret, so you can really address those in messaging. I will never envy Sarah's job of thinking of, you have people from all over the world every single day, and it's impossible to really have the level of messages that we're going to be having for the World Cup, because that's another thing. Coke was willing, and I still don't understand how we got the marketing team to accept this, but they were willing to leave a lot of the assets that we got for promotion of recycling. So it's calls to actions around recycling and calls to action on like, hey, make sure that you actually put that empty container where it belongs. Let's make sure that becomes part of our chain. So I do see a significant change in how it's addressed, and how even from a consumer standpoint, sustainability is now an expectation, which leads our marketing teams to say, okay, fine, maybe that message is as relevant as it would be yet another ad for Coke Zero, which I never said that, guys. So, but those are kind of like the conversations that we usually have, and I didn't used to win them, and now we are.
Take advantage of it. So Abraham and I are often talking about like final mile delivery of our products to people, but Natalie, like how do you, when we have all these people who are coming from different places, I imagine this transportation network is focused on essentially funneling everybody to one place. Like, how do we handle the final mile delivery of people ultimately to the stadium and to the fan zone?
Yeah, so once, folks, the way to get there is usually transit, because we have a big international fan base that's coming to these events. So from the transit stations, or what we're calling the bus hub around the stadium, there's lots of wayfinding. And what's unique about this event is the international presence. So we have to be able to present pictures or words in a way that those international guests can find their way to the stadium, for example, on match days. And so we're looking at the signage that needs to be in place, the pictures that maybe can depict different types of modes, maybe like our bus hub. We are being consistent with that across all host cities. And so those types of things, as folks travel to and from the stadium, from the bus hub, we also have what we're calling a technology lot, which I think we're going to use rideshare, which is a common term. But again, we're looking at ways that we communicate that to the guest, leaving those locations, traveling to the stadium itself is our main focus, and looking at the wayfinding signs that need to be in place to direct them so that they find their way back after the event to the lots they need to get to. Luckily, our bus hub location is viewable from you can see the stadium from the lot, which does help. If you have a location where you can see where you're going, oh, there's the stadium. That's a easy way finding identifier for folks that are coming into the entertainment district area. And so we're lucky to have that presence, but we also are looking at how we communicate those items to them. There's also multiple checkpoints getting in the stadium, so we're working very closely with FIFA about how we direct people to the right security checkpoint, so they can get into and out of the event venue. And so those are items that we have to direct them to and make sure that they understand what side of the stadium they need to go to. We're looking at additional things because it's supposed to be very hot, shade structures, water cooling stations, first aid, areas to rest if they need to rest along the way. It is only about a half-mile walk to the stadium from these locations, but it's still expected to be very hot. We've looked at how much difference our weather is than those other international travelers, and we're a lot warmer here than pretty much all of the first-round groups that are coming to Dallas. So we need to understand what type of weather they're used to and what they might experience when they get here, and then what amenities do we need to put in place to ensure they get to the stadium safely and can get back. There's also an ADA component that we have in our plan, so folks that need that accessibility to the stadium, that will go to all of the lots, the bus hub, the rideshare lot, to make sure those folks have access to and are able to get to and from the event venues well. Similar to the Fan Fest, the transit would get you there. We have wayfinding from the transit stations to the entrances, and then there's also the tram shuttle that runs during the State Fair. That's going to run during the Fan Festival to get folks from the transit locations into the entrance of the Fan Festival, to make sure that they have another option other than just walking from the transit stations into those facilities. Portable message boards is one key component that we're using, and seeing if there's ability to put pictures or other languages on those to help communicate to those fans that are coming here.
So speaking of international guests, I'm an airport snob, and whenever I visit someplace for the first time, it's the first thing I do is look at the airport. And how do we, as the North Texas area, how do we give a good first impression to international guests who are coming through DFW Airport? It's a lot of pressure.
It is. It's a lot of pressure. And you talk about being an airport snob. When I travel to other airports, the thing I take photos of is their trash cans. I sound like such a waste nerd, but no, that's something I think about, because if you think about the millions of fans who are coming here, all these customers, waste is it's a visible issue, and behavior change is tough. When I get together in sustainability venues and talk with other airports, there's no one airport that has the golden solution. Everyone is facing the same challenge. If you have people from all over the world that are used to different ways of handling waste and recycling, and how do you change their behavior in one day? And the likelihood is that you're probably not. So what we're really focused on is, what are the ways we can do to work on the invisible behind the scenes systems to make that more seamless? So really thinking about waste, for example, we've ramped up our compost program over the last several years. Over 80 food and beverage concessionaires in our terminals are composting now, as well as American Airlines Admirals Clubs, our 3 on-airport hotels, even our office buildings. Today, composting is pre-consumer, so it's really all the food scraps from the kitchens. If you're a passenger and you eat at a restaurant, you're not going to put your waste in the compost bin yet. That's coming one day. Used cooking oil, that's another thing that happens behind the scenes. If you're having French fries, all of that used oil from the fryer is being recycled to make things like sustainable aviation fuel, renewable fuel, biodiesel. Where we do have the passengers having more of a touch point is with recycling. And this is where, as Natalie talked about, using graphics-based symbology is really important, standardizing our bins across the terminal, so no matter which terminal you're in, you're looking at similar color coding and symbology for recycling and for waste. We have also partnered with Coca-Cola over the years to deploy and to pilot AI-assisted bins. They're not going to be deployed at a wide scale yet for FIFA, but that's something we're also thinking about. That's another opportunity. If you don't have the time for education of a customer, where can you use technology to improve that? And I wanted to throw a shout out here, because I was talking about composting, and back in 2019, we actually did a waste audit at DFW, where over 3 days we sorted through about 2 tons of waste from our terminals, because we wanted to look at the composition of our waste stream and identify ways to increase our waste diversion and improve our strategy. And Abraham was out there with us in a Tyvek suit, sorting through all this nasty trash. So shout out to Abraham. So partnerships like that with Coca-Cola, COG, other regional entities are really important, because it's constantly a moving target, thinking about how we handle waste. Some of the more visible things that we want travelers to see is at our TSA checkpoints, there will now be liquid disposal stations, so you don't have to throw away your water bottle. You can just dump the water, keep your water bottle through security. And then as we do our terminal retrofits and new construction, expanding water bottle refill stations, those will be important too. With all the construction, another kind of a little bit more behind the scenes thing we're focused on is construction waste diversion. We routinely divert over 90% of our construction waste from landfills, and a big part of that happens on site at the airport, but not necessarily where you're going to see it unless you're flying out and you look out your window. We have an on-site materials management facility where soil, asphalt, crushed concrete are kept from projects. For example, if we do a runway rehabilitation, the concrete from that runway is transported to that site, cut up and crushed and reused in other airport projects. So a lot of these things are behind the scenes, but it's something that we hope makes an impression on the travelers, is how we're managing waste through an event like this.
I remember the first time somebody invited me to a waste audit. Never again. Fool me once. All right. Question for the group then. So in my years working in sustainability, I've always been adamant to get the message across to other people that I work with, like, hey, as the sustainability person here, my job is not to always get you to choose the most sustainable option. I would like it if you did, but that's not my goal. My goal is to get you to consider sustainability as an option and to understand what the trade-offs are. So when we think about trade-offs and the balances that we're going to try to achieve here in terms of speed and quality and cost, what are some of the bigger challenges with a large-scale event like this where we're having to make some decisions, and what sort of trade-offs are we considering, and how do we manage those trade-offs?
I can go first, because I have a big challenge that might be specific to us. We, and this is the beverage industry, we operate by contracts, and then the contract is with a venue, and usually everything related to beverage, if you have a fountain offering, if you have coolers, even a lot of times recycling bins are part of that agreement. So for those of you that do not know, AT&T is not under Coke agreement. I cannot say the other name. It just kind of, it doesn't really come out my throat. But they're with another group. But for the World Cup, of course, we come in, and it's 30 days where we come in and we run the entire process. But you cannot really look at your waste hauling contracts and all that kind of stuff as a temporary thing that during those 30 days you're not going to use. It's still there, and it's still kind of embedded into the process. So a lot of the things that we need to do is we need to come in and talk about how we're going to be the new guys for 30 days asking for some changes and then leaving right after. So it's like, it's not even something where we get to. So the conversation needs to start with, how are we making the venue's life easier by bringing this request and by coming with this piece? And that's where we kind of look at what's the trade, what would our trade-off be? So usually when I work with venues, I build a program where we have the ability to know where the material is going, whether we can take it ourselves in many cases, and in that way reincorporate it into our bottles. Our bottles average 50% recycled content. We have some that go all the way to 100%. We have others that are a little bit on the lower side, but on average we use 50% recycled content. In order for us to get there, we need to be very consistent in getting material back into our suppliers. So that is the approach that we try to take as often as possible. Of course, when you look at something that you're only going to have for 30 days, you cannot really build a long-lasting commercial relationship with that waste hauler. So we accept that we're not going to have that control. We accept that we're not going to have the ability to have traceability over the material directly because it's within our ownership of our supply chain. So what we do instead is we look for a third party that can help us, give us that trust, so that when we're looking at making a claim like 80% of the materials that we sold during the tournament were diverted to recycling, we can back that claim. So we come in with a group, it's called Circular Solutions, the one that we're partnering with here for Dallas, and they will do an assessment and they will help AT&T verify that the process that their materials are taking on the back end ends on recycling markets, and as such that the material is getting recycled into new bottles, into new cans, the cardboard is made into new boxes, and so on. So we come in, we pay that for on behalf of the venue, so that we at least can say, well, we know that that's going to work. And once we have that, then we are able to make the investment on putting recycling calls to actions and recycling bins and messages out there, because the last thing we want to do is put all of that infrastructure front of house for the consumer and the people attending to see, and then have it turn out that it was actually all a lie and the material is all waiting somewhere. We're not, and it was a change maybe in how we typically address because at the end of the day they're our customers, but it was a change that we had to do, and where we say we cannot come and invest in your property and put these claims, because it's our brand that's taking the risk if the claim is not truthful. So if we're going to make that, if we're going to put these messages, we need collaboration and we need certainty that the material is going to get recycled. So to me, it's a big shift in how we do things, because it changes from maybe more supply chain focused approach of we want to control the material and that's why we're doing all this flow and that's why we're doing X, Y, and Z, to we want certainty that recycling is happening. So we're going to do a smaller maybe investment that it would do for us to take the material, but still an investment that yields no direct benefit. The only benefit that this is yielding is us knowing that the claim is truthful and that we are not putting ourselves at risk by making that claim.
That's a really interesting trade-off, and I can commend you. I appreciate how challenging that is to do, especially to go from cradle to grave. Natalie, curious, like you're trying to move all these people rapidly in huge numbers. What sort of trade-offs do you think you might have to look at?
Yeah, so our biggest challenge is getting everyone to the stadium in their seats by kickoff. And so obviously we have multiple modes that we're looking at. So obviously it would be great if we had enough capacity for everybody to take transit, which is a cleaner mode for folks to take. But that's not realistic. We can't transport 50,000 fans on our transit system. It does not have that capacity. So our trade-off is more balancing that demand across multiple modes. So we have a portion taken transit, which we want to utilize our international visitors to take transit. We complement that with roadway routing that we've done, looking at what routes folks need to take to get to and from the rideshare lot, as well as our parking facilities. And so we're fortunate to have options for folks to get on and off the freeway facilities around the stadium. We have about 8 different ramps they could take to get to and from parking. So we've been working on balancing that load across all of those ramps, making sure that we put directions for parking and parking passes that are purchased. And then we're also working with navigational apps to put those parking and navigational routes into that system as well. So if folks do use the navigational system, they're going to get hopefully the same route they would get on their parking pass. And then hopefully it's a heavier emission footprint because we're encouraging some folks to drive because our transit system can't handle it. But our goal is to try to balance it so we reduce that impact of emission. So it's a trade-off, but we're trying to do the most we can with that trade-off and then encouraging folks to use transit as well. So we have a more of a balanced approach to our mobility within the region so we can try to distribute that and be able to manage it, get folks to the match on time so they can enjoy it.
Sarah, same question for you. What sort of trade-offs are you making? People don't have a other way to get to the airport. They pretty much have to fly.
Yeah, that's true. So for us, there's a number of different trade-offs. And when we're talking about trade-offs that occur, I think it's really important to communicate your evaluation criteria and how you're measuring success. And so when there is a perceived conflict, we're looking at evaluating options using what we call the EONS framework, and it really just expands on the triple bottom line of sustainability, the people, planet, profit, but it adds the operational piece. So EONS is economic viability, operational efficiency, natural resource conservation, and social responsibility. Because at an airport, that operations piece is really important, especially with safety and security. So for us, success isn't just measured by environmental outcomes alone. And sometimes that's hard, that the environmental piece may not be as high of an impact as you want, but we're looking at success through a range of criteria. And using that framework has really helped us communicate with our stakeholders better. One of the things that when I started in my role, my boss told me is, whenever you meet with all these different departments and stakeholders, the first thing I want you to do is listen and ask them about their challenges. And he really emphasized that don't just start in bringing this new sustainability project, this new change in the mode of operation. First start by listening to their challenges and then work with them to develop a solution that doesn't just meet our environmental goals but also helps solve a problem that they're facing. And so when we experience these trade-offs, that's the process we're going through. On the transit side, we do have a fleet transition plan because yes, we have aircraft, but we also have a fleet of more than 1,000 vehicles across the airport, used everything from buses to transport passengers between terminals and the rental car center, snow plows, tractors, waste equipment. We have a lot of vehicles and those generate a lot of emissions. And we developed a fleet transition plan a few years ago that looked at over the next couple of decades how we would transition to alternative fuel vehicles, primarily electric. And as we started transitioning, we did run into a lot of road bumps with commercial vehicle availability, some manufacturers going out of business and not being able to service equipment. supply chain delays, especially during COVID, equipment and vehicles that couldn't meet our unique needs on the airport, especially with respect to range. So we had to pivot, and right now we're deploying a lot more hybrid vehicles when we originally anticipated full electric for some portions of our fleet. So there have been trade-offs, maybe less steep emissions reductions than we planned, but a better fit for our operations and safety and the reliability to meet the needs of an airport.
Well, you mentioned some interesting things there about transition plans, and so I want to start talking a little bit about like what's the legacy that we're trying to leave behind as individual organizations here. I know DFW Airport has a 2030 carbon neutral goal. Can you tell us like how does a large-scale airport achieve something? I imagine it has something to do with your fleet transition plan, but I'd love to know more. Tell us about it.
It does. So we've committed to achieve net zero carbon emissions by 2030. And what that means, there is a strict definition following the Airport Carbon Accreditation Program, which is the global carbon management program for airports and following the International Standards Organization. And it's defined as reducing your emissions from your baseline by at least 90%, and then using carbon removal, high quality carbon removal, to address the residual 10% of less of emissions. So not just relying on offsets, but first looking at your operations and reducing those emissions substantially. So that started off many years ago at DFW. We had staff, Ryan and my predecessor as well, that started out mapping airport carbon emissions long before that was really super common in North America. And so that footprint became the baseline of evaluating how we're going to get to net zero and building a roadmap. Transitioning to 100% renewable electricity for our facilities was a major step and a huge step change in reducing our emissions. And now looking at what we have left, the bulk of our remaining footprint is actually facility heating, natural gas. And so with our big capital program we have right now, we're building an electric center utility plant. It worked out well because our current plant is really nearing end of life, and to support the new terminal we're building, the additional terminal expansion, we needed a new central plant to provide heating and cooling for those millions of square feet of terminal space. So now that facility will mainly rely on renewable electricity for heating, and that'll reduce our natural gas consumption in the plant by around 80%. So that's a huge piece of it. The next big piece of that is focused on addressing our fleet. Those thousands of vehicles, not thousands, around 1,000 vehicles, as they are coming up for replacement nearing the end of their useful life, looking at low and zero emissions alternatives. But we do know not everything can be transitioned immediately, so we're also looking at renewable fuels, renewable diesel being one of those. Our bus fleet, which drives enough miles to circumnavigate the globe, I think every 18 hours or so, it uses 100% renewable natural gas, and that comes from local landfills south of Dallas. And then finally, just looking at small, hard-to-abate parts of our operation, refrigerant loss from the cooling equipment in our central plant, transitioning to refrigerants that have a lower environmental impact. So we do have a plan to get to net zero by 2030. We evaluate progress annually. We publish that because for us it's really important not just to set an ambitious goal, that's a huge part of it and that it drives progress, but to also measure how we're doing and evaluate performance with KPIs.
Very cool. I'm jealous. Natalie, we're talking about legacies, and it occurs to me you've been through Super Bowls, you've been through massive like NCAA Final Four events. Like, what sort of legacy do you think we'll have at the end of this? 9 games over 30 days, 35 days. What are we going to learn from this, or what do you hope that we'll learn from this coming out of this event?
Yeah, so I guess I'm going to start on the softer side of things. So one thing that we do learn after even the Super Bowl, the NCAA Final Four game, we do all this planning with our partner agencies. And so the reason why our board has us kind of coordinate these activities is because it helps us with day-to-day operations. So we build these partnerships, we build these groups that know how to operate when a crash occurs. And so when we do these for special events and we come up with all of these planning activities related to how we clear crashes quickly on the freeway facility, how we deal with a bus bridge if the train stops, that type of work activity helps us in our daily job. And so on the softer side of things, those those partnerships and that communication and those folks that you meet and you have contacts with help you do your day job. And so that's one reason why our board supports us to be very involved in these large regional special event planning activities. On the other side of infrastructure, we have worked with multiple partner agencies to deploy legacy-type projects, connecting sidewalks in Arlington that weren't connected. We helped fund those projects. Working with TxDOT to complete roadway projects. TxDOT actually deployed new overhead signs on all of our freeways prior to World Cup because we're presenting ourselves to the world. So TxDOT took on an initiative upon themselves to go around and clean up our roadway facilities, getting them look presentable to the world as folks come in. So those sidewalk type things, we've also put out more technology out there so we can look at pedestrian movements in and around the stadium and the entertainment district and look at those movements as they approach the stadium and they go back to the lots. Those are things that are sticking around for other events after the World Cup, but they're put in place to help with the operation of World Cup. And so those type of, legacy type things are things folks are going to continue to enjoy in our region. And luckily we've had the World Cup come here, so we get to utilize that as an opportunity. One other thing I would note is, we get 9 matches here. Usually we plan for one event. We have this big plan and then we have the event and it's over. This is a really unique opportunity for our region because we put this plan into place and we get to fine tune it for 9 matches. You usually don't get that in your career when you're working with special events. And so we're very excited to be able to take our plan and refine it and refine it and refine it and refine it until we get to that final match. And it should be pretty good after the 9th time.
Perfect.
So that is really a legacy, is because the refinement that goes into it, it gives us an opportunity to continue to make it better, which is a really cool opportunity.
That 9th match is going to be like clockwork.
Yeah.
It's going to be awesome.
Yeah, we might not even have to show up that day. I don't know.
Just autopilot.
Yeah.
Abraham, same question for you. It's going to be really intense. A lot of effort over a short amount of time. What does North Texas, or what does Coca-Cola learn from this, and sort of like what's the legacy? How do we take something from this event and apply it going forward?
So I think there's kind of 2 elements: is the legacy that it leaves behind, but then also the legacy that the games here, but really the games in this edition will create as learnings for the Coke company team working with FIFA on future editions of the World Cup. Because one of the things that for us is key is it needs to be a kind of information sharing, not only locally and not only get the best version of the World Cup that we can for this edition, but also we want to make sure that we provide as much as possible of learnings and understanding and best practices for the Coke system, because that's the quickest way that we have widespread impact. Anything that is picked up as a learning and then gets replicated, then you're talking about something happening all across the world for any future event. So that is one big element of how we manage things and how we work together with the Coke company on making sure that everything is captured and that those learnings. So I've been having daily calls for Trophy Tour learnings since last week, even though our stops really start tomorrow in Oklahoma City, because of that kind of system and network learning. So that is one big piece. I think that every event will just keep building on it and keep creating a better deliverable. But then for us, we are the regional bottler. We're headquartered here in Dallas. We're not the Coca-Cola company. So when events like this come in, they force a lot of the relationships that maybe are handled more usually on a national level to create a direct, immediate relationship locally. So for us, it becomes something where we are now going to be that community partner for a lot of these, or that corporate partner for a lot of these community organizations that we want to work with and want to collaborate with. And they will also get now a more direct point of contact for anything that they want to work with in the future. But then I guess the other big piece is it is helping us connect with parts of the city and groups within city that we didn't really have. You know, so even something as simple as AT&T Stadium. It's not our account today, but still we were able to collaborate and we were able to coordinate. So it helps with a lot of that same knowledge that we have as a Coke system that normally a venue like AT&T wouldn't have access to because we're not in communication over how to improve on their programs. We come in and then we can come and say, this is the list of learnings that we've seen, not only within our territory, but also these are things that we've seen in Los Angeles that have worked, in Seattle that have worked, in you know, anywhere in North America. So it creates that ability to connect back into, to connect the city back into that global network.
Thank you. Unfortunately, we are at the very end of our time. We have just enough time for like a quick hit question and very like fast answers, like 10 words or less. But if you were to say, like, what do you think or what do you hope will be the one thing that after this is all said and done and the World Cup packs up and leaves, unfortunately, what are we going to be able to point at and say, like, that is here and that exists because of the World Cup and it happened here? Quick hits.
I think a mindset shift around sustainability. A lot of these international travelers come here with an expectation for sustainability and operations. And so this is our chance to show the world that, yes, Texas can be a leader in sustainability, but I hope that drives a mindset shift locally, and that there's an expectation from our regional community as well for that going forward.
I was thinking along those same lines. I'm definitely not going to keep it under 10 words, sorry, Ryan. But basically, there's a gap between intention and purchase, and that gap is very evident on sustainability messaging. People might say, I support this sustainability product or sustainability initiative or effort or message, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they will put their dollars into it. I hope that this, because of, to Sarah's point, that the emphasis that other regions of the world have already put into sustainability, I hope that this is evident during that month, and it makes companies reconsider whether sustainability should be a selling point and should be part of their messaging.
Natalie, final word?
Yeah, I would say to showcase our transportation system, and then maybe it would encourage us to allow transit service for other special events we have in the entertainment district.
Awesome. All excellent things. I hope they all happen. Ladies and gentlemen, please, big round of applause for our panel.